just gonna retire. Whitey, big fan of the show. Appreciate you, Brian Murphy to my left, making sure everything's smooth, crispy, buttery. James Harden is systematically ruining the game of basketball. The most overrated player. And there you are, the Chicago Bears with a champion season. And I'm sure Dancing with the Stars is happy to have Antonio back. If you thought you were going to get Zion, that's your bad.
Now listening to Open Season, your host, Billy.
Good evening, and welcome to Open Season. I'm your host, Billy Allen. We got Frankie Bradica joining us as always. Facebook, we're locked out of there. So we're coming to you on YouTube and Twitter. We're hoping that we get our sentence, hopefully they're looking at that. But Brady, he's looking normal. Baker Mayfield led his team on a comeback, 2 days in the facility. Brock Purdy looks pretty good for the San Francisco 49ers. The Patriots and Cardinals played last night. That one wasn't very pretty, but the Patriots walk away with a win. The Lions and Jags are finishing the year with the arrow pointing up. And Josh McDaniels and the Patriots are going to have a pretty big matchup next weekend. Bronny James and Carmelo Anthony's kid are playing. That's pretty crazy. Justin Herbert set the passing mark for yards in the first 3 seasons. But we start out with last night's game, Frank. Patriots against the Cardinals. Kyler Murray got hurt 3 plays into that one, trying to dice up Matthew Judon. And Colt McCoy was in the game pretty quickly, and Colt McCoy looked pretty similar to the quarterback on the Patriots. Didn't look like a great offensive performance for the Pats, but they come out with a 27-13 win. You saw Mac Jones going back and forth with Matt Patricia on the sidelines, and still seems like things aren't quite right in Foxborough, but nonetheless, they get the win. What was your take on it, Frank?
I'll go to the game in a second. Listen, and I know I incessantly bitch about this, so I'm sorry. Mac Jones, you've played like 20 games in the NFL. Shut up. I'm aware the coaching's bad, and so is the rest of the world. Shut up and take the coaching, because that's what your job is. You've done nothing. Shut up, please. Have fire and do all that. Shut your mouth, please. Thank you. As for the game, and I don't mean to say this almost ironically, it's just like the Patriots' luck to have a player go down at the 13:50 mark, 3 plays into the game, because that's just what happens. LT gets hurt the week before we play them in the playoffs. That's just what happens. I think you gave me the stat. We have 7 wins and 6 of them are against backup quarterbacks. That or somebody that's since lost their job. That is who we are right now. We are not looking to beat any good teams. If you look at the upcoming schedule, we are going to probably lose out. I know it's cute that we own tiebreakers and we look like we're in the playoff hunt. We're not a playoff team. We're bad. In that game last night, I looked up in the fourth quarter. First of all, I thought I'd been punched in the face several times. Second of all, we had scored 27 points, and I'm like, I don't know where these points came from. It was like a Tim Duncan 30 and 15. Sure, I'm sure you impacted the game because your numbers indicate that you did, but I can't remember a single thing you did. No, I mean, just not a single thing you did. And there was a fumble return for a touchdown. So not all those points were offensive.
Yeah, and I mean, a couple times they got the ball in pretty favorable field position. They got a couple rookie running backs that score touchdowns. It's just the Patriots always find ways to surprise you. If you told me that Ramondre Stevenson would have a game where he gets 3 carries for 8 yards, I would have thought that was impossible. But I mean, you just never know what the Patriots are going to try. I think they set a record last night with 12 screen passes. Frank, your quarterback's not great when you basically ask him to throw horizontally every other toss. I mean, this guy doesn't even throw the ball downfield, and when they do, they make mistakes. They tried to air the ball out earlier this year, and Mac Jones was throwing turnovers so quickly that everyone in Foxborough was clamoring to get Bailey Zappi in there and booing when Mac Jones was playing at the time. So it's just, and then these hissy fits on the sideline. To your point, it's like we get that the situation sucks, but you just haven't earned it. It's like Tom Brady had like one freak out in his career. You can pretty much remember it against Bill O'Brien.
That's not
There
true
was
at all.
also a McDaniels one later, but I think you get one freak out for every 10 Pro Bowls. You know, something like that should be the balance. I don't know. But I do feel like Mac Jones probably had a better offensive coordinator in middle school than Matt Patricia. So I could see why he's frustrated, but he's got to bottle that up.
Not only does he need to bottle that up, but again, the Patriots, sorry, the Cardinals defensive coordinator laughed at our offensive coordinator. And our offensive coordinator, because of his ego, is going to walk in today and say, oh, look at that great offensive performance we put forth. We really shut up that guy who was talking trash when Kyler Murray leaves 3 plays in. This is the same man calling offensive plays who once said, I've got one of the greatest defensive plays in Super Bowl history. No, you don't. No, you don't. You called the play and somebody else made the play. Or you made a call, somebody made the play. Shut up. Shut up. Sit up when you're talking to me. This guy is an absolute fraud, absolute bozo the clown. And the fact that and we know that. So Mac, relax. Do what your job is though. Because you throwing tantrums is not like you look like T.O. Nobody's gonna call you out for it, but you look bad. And Tom Brady, just so we're clear, had several blowups with teammates, with coordinators, and with players on the opposing team. I mean, I get it. We love it because he wins, so we put it all in the box. And I do the same thing with Belichick and his snooty, disrespectful, condescending way he treats the media. I'm like, yeah, but he wins, so who cares? I get it, but in Mac Jones's case, you got no leg to stand on.
Yeah, I'd be a lot more inclined to forget the blow up if Mac Jones would win a few more games or and you know, he should have been better this year. There should have been a better system for him. They should have done things better, but it's like you can only it's like he's having these arguments. He knows that this is in front of TV, like national TV. And it's basically like he's almost trying to show like, hey, this is not my fault. Like I'm not part of it. You know, it's like almost like he's trying to point to us like this is not me. And it's like, we get it, dude. Like nobody could do well with this, but it's also like at some point, you just got to shut up and try to do as good as you can.
Yeah, but how good is Mac Jones really? Even though everything around him is on fire, there's about 28 other teams he's going to be just as bad on.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think Mac Jones is great. And I think the Patriots show you every week the confidence that they have in him, whether it's 3 passes against Buffalo in the windstorm or 12 screens last night. It's like Bailey Zappi is allowed to throw the ball downfield more. And I guess I just don't even know if you're Matt Patricia, what are you even supposed to do with Mac Jones at this point? Every time he throws down the field, it's a turnover or nothing good happens when Mac Jones throws the ball down the field. Nothing
part of
good
that
happens.
Part of that is the receivers don't get open. So it's tough for anybody to throw the ball to not open receivers. Secondly, he's 17 and 17 in his career, Mac Jones, 17 and 16. So that's what he is. And that's on a Patriots team who's, by the way, their offense has been just as good with Mac Jones as it was with Cam Newton. So he can throw a tantrum all he wants. He has been as good in his 2 years as Cam Newton was in his 1. So take that for what it's worth. I know the Patriots are, I think, 2 games over 500 since Tom left. When Tom was here and we played without him, I think we were 5-3. So we've been good without him, but we've been slightly above average good. That's what we're going to be. Our roster's bad. We have money allocated in poor directions. It's just bad. And Mac Jones is standard. He's life cereal. Like, yes,
yeah, I just think it shows you something when Marcus Jones, you know, a cornerback punt returner is one of our better offensive weapons that they've found this year. It's like he's pretty much outperforming Thornton at this point. I just find that sad to be like, look at the way they have to inject this guy. Like, this offense is so thirsty for talent that they could take a punt returner and just chuck him in, and he could pretty much jump to the front of the heap as far as the wide receiving core.
Jacoby Myers is too slow. Devontae Parker never was able to run routes. And Kendrick Bourne is small and they hate him. So we don't have anybody on the field who can do all three things. We have no receiver that is big, fast, strong, good hands, can run routes. We have none of those here. No, we have tons of money spent, but we have none of the guys who can do all those things. We have gadget guys that are great gunners. We have great money spent at tight end. I'm not sure we have a good tight end, but I guess that's a separate story. It's just bad all around. It's just been bad. It looks bleak, and we got a couple. I think next year is the last year we have to keep some of these contracts before we can cut them for little money. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't fire Bill, and I've always said that Kraft isn't going to let him go. He's going to let Parcells and Brady go, but I would hope this is starting to get looked at objectively.
I think it is. I think there's already going to be no way that I think that you could bring back, like Matt Patricia as like with the performance that they've had. I feel like Kraft is going to be like, Bill, you can't do this again.
But who's coming in? It's going to be another Tony.
It's going to be like Bill. It's going to be Bill O'Brien. I feel like
he's going to take a head coaching job. He's not going to come back here. Maybe Eric Mangini.
I would take Eric Mangini. Is he done enough rehab for Bill to bring him back? I mean, I think he got locked out of the facility back in the day.
Would Eric Bieniemy do it?
That's a good question. I feel like he should get a head coaching job, but he never does. So maybe he would.
But what if we could offer him the head coaching job in training? Like, whether we give it to him or not. What if we could just say, hey, you'll be the successor. Come fix this offense and Mac Jones. And if not, you'll
I
draft.
don't know. He interviews for coaching jobs every year and doesn't get them for some reason. So maybe he would be more inclined to take something like this that would give him a pathway there if he can't get it. Yeah, like if I'm him, maybe I'd be more open to something like that where he could slide into the head. Because it seems like he's had trouble getting a job. I don't know why, but it just seems like he's had trouble. So maybe he would be likely to do that. Sweeten the deal for him. Let him be the coach in 3 years.
You know,
nothing's guaranteed too. You could do whatever.
It'll never happen. But one of the two things I'd like to see, Steve Sarkisian or Lane Kiffin. Get a real guy in here with real opinions, challenge Bill. Let them both go when it blows up. And if at best you get lightning in a bottle, at worst you get a calamitous ending where you as the owner are not responsible because you could no longer have this untenable situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I almost wonder if they were to bring in somebody like that, maybe Bill would just let them, because it's like, I feel like right now Bill is kind of letting guys be how they want. I mean, could you ever imagine Bill allowing a player to upstage a coach? 5 years ago, even 3-4 years ago, the way that Mac Jones is right now, like he wouldn't have let Willie McGinnis do that. And he's letting Mac Jones do that. So it's almost like
he let Tom Brady do that. Tell the truth.
Again, after like 15 years of blood, sweat.
Tom Brady argued with Charlie Weiss and McDaniels early on. He argued with Bill O'Brien early on. What? Tom's been fiery his whole career. I don't hold it against him. But let's not act like this is new. And also, he didn't necessarily let Richard Seymour do whatever Richard Seymour wanted, but Richard Seymour did it anyway. We had that whole 2009 season where the team rebelled against him. The only time it's happened, even though it feels like it's happening for a second time.
Yeah,
it's happened. That Sam Shields team, that whole team kind of just, the end of the dynasty was not pretty.
No, it wasn't. And you remember that game against the Saints or whatever, where Belichick talking to Brady says, I just can't get this team to do what I wanted to do or whatever. That was the 1 year.
That quote is.
But I feel like we're close to. I feel like we're close to that situation now. It just feels like the way that Mac Jones was calling out Patricia after it feels like there's. it feels like they won, which usually is a point where you could kind of like move on past that. But it seems like the fact that they're still having these issues in a win tells me that they're not done with that yet.
Look, you've got no quarterbacks. You've got Bailey Zappi and you've got Mac Jones, which means you've got no one. I'd be happier if we had picked up Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. Well, Baker Mayfield was definitely a hell of a pickup. We talked about how rough it's been for the Patriots. Las Vegas, they've had 4 games of 17-point leads that they've dropped. And so they just it's like you basically know that no lead for them is safe. You could kind of tell at the end of that game, you're waiting for LA to find a way. And Baker Mayfield drives the ball down like John Elway, 98 yards at the end of the game. As time expires.
Elway.
I mean, it's like Baker Mayfield is a star overnight. I feel like the stories in the NFL, the narratives in the NFL get changed so quickly. It's like the beginning of the week, he's getting cut by Carolina. The end of the week, people are talking about, his resolve, his ability to get in the playbook after 2 days. And it's just like, we're basically calling this guy a POS on Monday. And it's like, we're talking about probably LA giving this guy a contract on Friday. And it's just amazing how quickly stuff like that goes. I feel like Baker Mayfield honestly has a chance to be the quarterback for the Rams, maybe potentially in the future. Do you think there's a chance? Do you think this is just an audition?
They have no first-round picks, so yes, they should be looking at this as a real option. I was looking at the game cast. So at 3 minutes and 19 seconds, the Rams scored to make it 10-16. So they were down 16-3 up until 3 minutes and 19 seconds left. I mean, that's just if you're the opposing team, you got to hold on to that game. That's a stunning loss. That's bad. That's bad to a guy who's effectively got 7 plays on his playbook. I mean, that's unacceptable.
And I mean, Derek Carr, you talk about that game from a fantasy perspective. I think he put up 3 points. That may be one of the lower totals I've seen in a while. 137 yards, 11-20 with 2 picks. He had done pretty well until, post the crying incident. But this is kind of a comeback to earth. Now they've got to play against the Patriots this week. They're 5-8. They probably kissed their chance at the playoffs goodbye unless they were to win out.
They'll beat us though.
Well, I was going to say, that McDaniels is going to come and empty the cupboard as far as the play calling. Do you do think that Las Vegas will win that game?
I do. I know Bill's got a great track record against his former coaches, but they've got more talent on both sides of the ball, so that's usually the team that wins. Our offensive line is not very good, prone to penalties. Our quarterback is not very good, prone to being a little bitch. Our receivers don't get any separation. They're not very good. Our tight ends are slightly above average. So that's what we're dealing with. And I know our secondary plays well. Their numbers are good, but they're also very handsy, get a lot of flags. We don't generate a lot of pressure if we're not blitzing. It's a very limited team. And the Raiders have far more talent, and both teams are so familiar with each other, the rosters and the coaches. We're going to lose because they're better.
Yeah. Well, I do think that it just seems like the Patriots, since Tom Brady is gone, they just can't beat good quarterbacks. They basically beat these young quarterbacks or backups or teams that are hurt. I mean, how often have they beat a good quarterback at full strength? You may have to go back to like the Herbert win last year against the Chargers. It's been very few and far between. The last names of the quarterbacks they're beating this year are, it's Wilson, it's Trubisky, it's Ellinger. It's when they play your Lamar Jacksons, when they play Allen. I mean, they're not beating those types of quarterbacks. So is Derek Carr in the class of those top quarterbacks? I mean, I guess you're putting him above the scrub level guys that we've beat.
I thought he was somewhere 10 to 15 in that classic underrated Phillip Rivers mold. Always going to be healthy, gritty, can run, is good enough at passing, surrounded with weapons. Derek Carr this year has come out and absolutely pissed down his leg. It's been miserable. He's not been effective. He's not been a good leader. The team has no consistency. That's got to fall somewhat on coaching yet. Well, mostly on coaching, but somewhat on the quarterback. He can't steady the ship. I know Devontae Adams is new, but number one, he's the best receiver in the league. Number two, other guys that are there have been there. And I know you're missing Renfro, and I know you're missing Waller. And I always said Renfro was the key to the offense because he's Mr. Third Down, and he can do gadget things, and he's wonderful for that offense. But you have Devontae Adams and Derek Carr. That should be good enough to not blow 17-point leads. It's not like you're not getting ahead in these games. And by the way, you have good pass rushers. So it's like you're getting ahead of these games and you have guys like a rush the passer. That's the old Colts recipe when they had Peyton Manning in the mid-2000s. Yeah, we might have a bad defense, but we can cause turnovers and sack you. We can't stop you, but we can get up by 1,000 points and then have Dwight Freeney and Robert Mathis come chase you.
So the Patriots are 7-6. They play Las Vegas that we previewed a little bit. They play Cincinnati, Dolphins, Buffalo. 4 games left. You probably have to at least have 2 of them in order to be even close to, think that you're going to get into the playoffs. What do the Patriots do in these last 4 games?
Ask me how many games I think they'll win.
How many games do you think they'll win?
0. 0 out of 4.
Now, is that sports radio, Frank, or is that, Frank, if you were actually betting your own money, would you say that?
That is a fantastic line to draw, and I never reveal, past the fourth wall here, but no, we're gonna go 0-4. It's possible we beat the Raiders. Well, it's possible you beat anybody. At full strength, we are not beating the Bills. We are not beating the Bengals. We're gonna lose those games. I think we can beat the Raiders. It's a good chance. But don't you just get the feeling that no matter what happens, it's going to be a cardiac game? They're going to get up 30-0. We're going to get up 31-30, and then we're still going to lose because they're better than us, and both teams suck. Neither team can handle prosperity. The Raiders at least are exciting with superstars on their team. Patriots got nothing. We have an old grumpy coach, a guy who has a pencil to write on a laminated play sheet, who coaches defense and offensive line, now is our offensive coordinator. I mean, it's just an absolute clown car of ineptitude.
So speaking of one of these teams that you didn't really talk about would be the Dolphins. It seems like people have started to figure out that offense a little bit, or at least slow them down. Do you think that the Patriots will be able to slow them down? They got them to play a lot slower than they had been earlier in the season. How do you look at that game? Because that's the one game you didn't mention. And I feel like that game might determine that whole thing, really.
Yeah, I'm going to segue this, and I hate to do that, but because we brought up the Dolphins separately, boy, do I like me some Mike McCoy. There's not a more likable coach, including Dan Campbell, in the league. That guy is absolutely hilarious in sound bites and interviews. He's been funny since San Francisco. Love him. Big fan over here. We're going to lose that game, and it's not because I like him. And to a greater extent, yeah, they've been figured out because the Chiefs also kind of got figured out for the end of last year. Oh, just move the safety back an extra 10 yards because Tyreek Hill is that fast. Heard. And it's working. And it worked for and what happened with the Chiefs is, oh, we still have Patrick Mahomes. We still have Travis Kelce. So that's not good enough. Well, on the Dolphins, that's good enough. And because that safety's back there for Tyreek, when Tyreek's the decoy, Jalen Waddle's not getting that route either. So because they do a lot of the same things, it is more detrimental to this Dolphins offense than it was to that Chiefs offense. Also, their quarterback's not as good. The coach is great. I think eventually he'll get to draft his guy. I'm not sure Tua's that. Him and Tua have been good. They've been good. They're better than us by a lot. But I do think somewhat of the blueprint of this team has been brought up. You have to make Tua throw it outside the numbers. You take away the seams. You take away the middle of the field. Take away anything over your head. And what does that guy have? He's not throwing 12, 15, 18-yard comeback routes all game to beat you. He'll make a fair few. He's accurate. He's not making those all game to beat you.
So one guy that nobody's made a blueprint to stop yet is Brock Purdy, who has just been coming out of the gates here in the first 2 games. I mean, obviously, anybody could play quarterback in the San Francisco offense. I mean, we've been over that. But Brock Purdy,
no. Statistically, as luck would have it, that's not the case.
well, I mean, Mr. Irrelevant seems to pick it up pretty quickly.
But every other quarterback has not. Let's tell the truth here.
But I mean, Brock Purdy looking pretty good in these first couple games. The 49ers still playing really well. Do you look at them as the class of the NFC right now if Brock Purdy is their quarterback? Like, I'm just wondering how you look at the 49ers. I think they're such a strong team. They were favored to beat the Buccaneers this week, even with Brock Purdy at the helm. And it just feels like they're so strong everywhere that if Brock Purdy can manage the ship, they might still be okay.
Debo just got hurt. Christian McCaffrey gets hurt a lot, and we have seen nothing from Purdy. Purdy in his 1.5 games has been about as good as Mike White in his one really good game, and they're both average quarterbacks at best. Brock Purdy is handsome, and his teammates seem to really be behind him, and that's wonderful. But Trey Lance was a bust. Okay, Alex Smith was a bust. You've got one guy, and all it cost you was a second. And that Italian stallion, Jimmy Garoppolo, is the only chance they had at winning a Super Bowl. If we were to do pretenders right now, 49ers, pretenders, because they're pretending to have a quarterback that isn't Jimmy Garoppolo, and it's not going to work. Brock Purdy has been steady, sturdy Purdy, but he's been average.
Well, we'll do contenders and pretenders.
And also, Debo's out. Also, for the record, Debo's out. So Purdy's going to look a lot less good with McCaffrey 50-50 and Debo out.
Well, with you segueing into the contenders and pretenders, why don't we do that? So we had the Buccaneers on there. Are they a contender? They're a pretender?
They are a terrible team, but they are contenders. When you have a top defense and the opportunity for offense because you have talent on that side of the ball, and that is steered by the greatest player of all time, when you get in the playoffs, you're going to win your division, which means you get your first game at home. And then, I mean, you're 3 wins away. I don't think I'm not shocked or saying it's impossible that they win 3 or 4 straight playoff games because they have Tom Brady, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin. They've got talent on this team. And don't get me started on the other side of the ball.
No, the 49ers, you just kind of answered that, I think.
No. As luck would have it, there is a real me and a version of me who does the show. 49ers are a contender, and they should be a contender no matter who's a quarterback. Even though that has not always been the case, that's what should be the case. Anybody who steps in a quarterback or running back for that team should be set up pretty nicely. That's one thing Kyle Shanahan's done well his whole career. That defense right now is looking healthy. That defense always looks good when healthy. They're not always healthy. Warner being healthy, Bolster being healthy, they're good. They've got weapons all over that defense. That Iafanga, that new defensive back they've got. I mean, he's been there, but he's finally good. I mean, they just have even their like role players are significantly better than every other 31 team's role players. They've got a deep team. They've got top-end talent. They're contenders, but I'm not sold on Brock Purdy. So I take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the Buccaneers, I think you're with Brady, you could always get on one of those crazy runs. It just feels like this year is not the year for them. It just feels like they're not in it. They haven't been very competitive. It just seems like they've dropped a lot of balls. They're not like totally in sync in offense. It seems like their offense kind of has it. For some, it's almost like streaky. Like, at the end of the games, they'll get a couple things going, but they haven't really been able to click on offense like they had. And I just don't know if the appetite is there after winning that Super Bowl. It just feels like after they won that Super Bowl, it feels like guys have unplugged a little bit there. And
Well, look, Vita Vea's missed time, and Ndamukong Suh's gone, Pierre Paul's gone. People have figured out that if you run towards Derek White and away from Levante David, he's really more of a coverage and pass rushing linebacker. He can't really stop the run. So, you know, that we've got a blueprint on some of these guys on how to play, on how to defend them. I know they're defenders, but on how to attack them is a better way to say that. But here's my
and then with
point.
the 49ers, I just feel like every year they're a team that you don't want to play by the playoffs. But I mean, Brock Purdy, what can we realistically expect out of him?
I know a guy who threw 5 passes and won a playoff game. And even though Purdy's not as good as that guy, it's possible.
He threw 5 passes?
No, didn't Garoppolo have one game where he completed 5 passes?
Maybe.
I want to say there was a divisional round game where they absolutely took the ball completely out of his hands. But I never let you bring it up because it's detrimental to my narrative.
Well, good. Glad you took some truth serum before this. Mike White, he is a pretender. All right. I want him to be a contender. I can see why the Jets players are so excited to have him in there. He's basically passed for around 300 yards each game, like a little bit over, a little bit under. They move the ball a lot more than like the 77 yards or whatever that Zach Wilson can move at a game. So I understand that's exciting. They've got his back. But I just feel like he doesn't really do anything special. I feel like Zach Wilson is the guy that if he were to be able to put it together, he has a good arm. You know, he's athletic. I don't think he will put it together, but I just feel like he's more of got the talent that you need to be a top end quarterback. And I just feel like Mike White, they're kind of getting excited for the change of pace that he is right now, but I don't think that he is. I mean, as excited as they are, he's a Braxton Berrios drop away from being 2-1, but they're 1-2. And I feel like it's going to be more like that with Mike White. I mean, Zach Wilson, I think, only lost 1 game despite how poorly he was playing.
The Jets are contenders for a playoff seed. They are not going anywhere near a Super Bowl. They can't even smell it. I don't even know if the NFL would let their players buy tickets, but their defense is absolutely legit. They are formidable. Their front seven and their defensive backs are all good. They need Zach Wilson in there because even though the players are talking what they're going to say publicly, and they maybe, we're starting to sour on Zach Wilson, the reason they win with the first round quarterback, because they see him in practice where I'm sure he's much better. And he may never figure it out in NFL games, but I'm sure in practice they see Mike White make the exact same throws that he makes in the game. They're like, yeah, that's all he can do. They see Zach Wilson do things that are unbelievable in practice, and then they see him throw it to the other team in the game. They're just like, but if he could just do in practice what he does in the game, you know what I mean? We'd be amazing. So if we just keep giving him the ball back, maybe he'll figure it out one day. And that optimism for a talented defense is paramount. I just know if they give the ball to Mike White, they're like, you're going to maybe go 80 yards, maybe get a field goal. Zach Wilson, it's like, you might get a 90-yard touchdown. You're probably going to throw it to the other team, but you might do something amazing.
So you think Mike White is a pretender?
Mike White as an individual is an absolute pretender. Well, no, he's pretending to be a starter. That's a good backup quarterback. He can be every bit as good as, say, Nick Foles as a backup, Joe Flacco as a backup. There have been John Kitna. There have been elite backups in the world. Jeff Garcia, Mike Vick. There have been great backups in the world. And that's what he's going to be. He's going to slot right in there. Just an elite backup quarterback.
All right, let's move to the Bills. Contenders or pretenders?
They've looked very pedestrian in the latter half of the season. I mean, what do you want me to say? They've got a great quarterback. They've got a really good defense. They've got weapons all over the field. They have Stephon Diggs, who single-handedly sends teams home in the playoffs because you just can't stop that man. They're contenders. I don't think until I see it with my own eyes, they'll ever convince me. Not them. I like their coach, like McDermott. I like their roster. I just don't think Josh Allen has it between the ears.
Yeah.
He's got all the raw
like
tools. He's Ben Roethlisberger-esque. I don't think he'll ever put it together.
This Bills offense looks clunky at times. I feel like sometimes it's just Stephon Diggs, and then if Stephon Diggs can't get open, there's really not much of a running game. I mean, obviously Josh Allen is their best running back, and he's super valuable when the play breaks down. He can run for 15 yards and truck a safety, but he had like 147 passing yards. I just feel like he hasn't quite looked like the same passer really since he had that injury. I mean, like you look at his games, he really hasn't had that Josh Allen passing game, but I don't even know if it's going to matter because he still uses his legs. But and also we've seen him go through stretches like this before, and he typically gets himself right. But it's just like, how long can the Bills be good without somebody else in that offense to catch the ball aside from Diggs and also, just any semblance of a running game outside of Josh Allen.
But they've had guys produce, just not all year, not consistently enough. Davis is a good
Cole
receiver.
Beasley's coming to save the day.
No. But Davis is a good receiver. Dawson Knox is a good receiving tight end. So if they get
Dawson Knox, I dropped his ass after like week 3.
Yeah, but you see the talent there though, right? So like if it started to go well, it wouldn't shock you because, oh look, he's talented. He just is limited. Just like Evan Ingram. Evan Ingram, I'm sure pissed you off, but he did that when he was with New York. He showed, hey, this guy's explosive. Can he stay healthy? No. Does he have stone hands? Yeah. But he's fast, and if you don't pay attention to him as a tight end in that position, running the seams, he's going to score.
Yeah, I'm interested.
It can't shock you.
I'm interested to see what you say here. I mean, I'm sure you're probably going to say the Chiefs are contenders, but the Chiefs were projected to win this game by like 13 points. They barely win by a touchdown. They give up like 28 points to the lowly Broncos offense. And it just seems like that team can't stop anyone, and that Mahomes has to be damn near perfect for them to win. And, will he stay this hot? Can they win in the playoffs with their defense being this weak?
It's going to be about turnovers, isn't it? It's going to be about turnovers. If they can force them, they'll be okay. That Saints team that won a Super Bowl with Drew Brees had a terrible defense, but they got sacks and they got picks. Signed Chris McAllister off the street. Tracy Porter came out of nowhere, and these guys had big plays for you. So if you can be aggressive and play with a lead, you've got a shot, especially in today's NFL. It does seem an awful lot like they rely on Mahomes. And it looked throughout the middle of the season like they had started to figure it all out in the sense that, all right, Juju runs these types of routes and Kadarius Toney came in and kind of filled the role. Oh, he's got some of that gadget stuff. I think Kadarius Toney might be the key to them being a versatile offense. Because it seems like Marquez Valdes-Scantling, when he's the only speed guy, and this was true in Green Bay, when you focus on him as the only speed guy, you get nothing. You get nothing out of him. So you got Juju, who's not right. You got Valdez, who's not right. And you can't run the ball. Your offensive line has been average. You just got Kelsey. He's getting doubled every play. And Mahomes is just so good, it doesn't matter. But if Chris Jones can get to the quarterback and they can get some turnovers, they're going to be fine because they've got the best quarterback in the league.
Now we go to our arrow pointing up or down discussion. Who do you think is going to be better next year, the Lions or the Jaguars?
I think Lions. If it's a 1v1 conversation, I think the Lions have more in their tank. But I think the arrows put it up on both of them. Trevor Lawrence has looked good for about a month now. And the Lions, Jared Goff is honestly had a resurgence that most people don't know because they don't care about him or Detroit. But he's been very, very good. Jamal Williams is having a career high in rushing yards, 14 touchdowns. He's probably going to run for 1,000 yards despite not being better than DeAndre Swift. But they've got talent. I do like Brock Wright. He's been a little disappointing since they traded TJ, but I know why they traded him. A, money. B, they think they've got something in this kid, and I think he's better than he's been in the NFL. Better than he's shown anyway. But the arrow's up on both of them.
I agree. It's fun to see these teams doing well. I feel like, when when Jared Goff went to Detroit, I almost kind of felt like it was almost like, to cross sports. It was like when they sent Chris Paul to Oklahoma City Thunder, like he was supposed to die there probably. And he ends up taking that team to the playoffs. I feel like I totally thought that Goff was going to die in Detroit, but I mean, he's shown himself that he's clear. In the Detroit Lions have said that they don't view him as their bridge quarterback. Like they're probably planning to plan around him in the future. And he's basically shown, and he's fifth in touchdown passes. Right now he has 22 touchdown passes, and he's only got 7 picks too. So he's really, I used to think he was an absolute puppet held together by the strings of Sean McVay. And, I just got to give him credit that he's learned to play ball a bit in Detroit.
He can make all the throws, and that was true in, I almost said St. Louis. That was true in LA. He can make all the throws. But he's a knucklehead. He can't move very well, and he can't read defenses to save his life. But if you get him, if you're a good play caller and you get his receivers open, he can make a throw, opposite hash mark, 60 yards across his body. He can make the throw. It's just he doesn't know what defense they're in. He's not a good leader. He's just so freaking limited. But he's got a great arm. He's boring.
He does have a great arm. Is the arrow pointing up or down on the Cardinals?
Boy, when you shell out 10 years, X amount of million to a coach and a quarterback combined, you really hope it's pointing up. But it is not. You lose Kyler after he signs the contract. Again, I was doing this with you before the show. Typically, it's 8 months before they're back and maybe eligible to play, usually a full year before they're back to where they were. That puts them right at about playoff time next year. That's week 15 next year. That's tough for that team. And you're at a point where you actually are in a position to draft another quarterback. If you had just waited a year, you wouldn't have needed to have done this. You could have they played their cards wrong, ironically enough. And I just don't think that who do you draft at 5? There's a lot of offensive and defensive linemen that are supposed to go in the top 10. You're going to draft an offensive or defensive lineman top 10 when you're going to win 4 games with Kyler Murray as your quarterback. And by the way, you're going to be bad next year as well.
Yeah.
Now, Cliff Kingsbury's not an NFL coach. It's so freaking down. They're going to cut bait with DeAndre Hopkins. No way they're paying that man $15-60 million for Kyler Murray to not throw the ball to him. And if I'm them, I wouldn't either. Tank and hope you draft a receiver that's good enough for when Kyler Murray is actually healthy.
Last question on this. Cole Beasley and T.Y. Hilton are 2 receivers that are getting thrown back into offenses at the end of the season. Cole Beasley just joining on with the Bills, T.Y. Hilton coming to the Cowboys. Who makes a bigger impact?
T.Y. Hilton is going to make a bigger impact. That team is begging for receivers. They have Gallup, not quite good enough. They have Brown, not quite good enough. But if they can get, 2 catches for 40 yards, and he can still run the 9 route, and they can change field position with him just once, the Cowboys are not a fully complete team, but they're damn close. So if you're looking for a guy to come in as a 4th, 5th receiver and make impact plays, maybe he can return punts. I don't know what kind of health he's in. But that would be huge for them.
If we switch the page to the NBA, the Celtics, they just kind of can't get past the Golden State Warriors. They definitely have a thing there, whatever you want to call it. It just seems like Golden State has their number. They lose to Golden State this weekend. Then they lose to the Clippers. Both those losses are around 20 points. They play against the Lakers tonight, and I don't know. I don't think that game has started, obviously, yet. But we'll see. We'll see what happens there. If something happens there, we'll really have to sound the alarm. But what has happened over the last 2 games? It just seems like Jason Tatum is kind of cooled down a bit. He's averaging like 22 points over his last, 5 or 6 games after averaging 32 over the first however many games. And it just seems like he can't play like an alpha against Golden State.
Against the rest of the league, complete hogwash. I don't care what the numbers say. He's not cooling down. He is amazing. Against Golden State, that boy's got no hot. Golden State's got him mentally. It's bad. It's like the 86 years the Red Sox couldn't win. I mean, they are in Tatum's head. And doesn't it just feel like Golden State walked onto the court and was like, oh, these assholes again? We're just going to beat them like we did in the spring. Like, they're not good enough to hang with us, despite us being amazing and them being mediocre this year. They look at us like the younger brother, and that'd be fine because we are finally better than they are, but we play like the younger brother. And until that changes, we're not going to beat them.
I just truly can't believe it wasn't the Celtics that this time that came out and was like, no, you can't play with us. I so thought that they were in a position with the way that they were playing, the way that they blew out the Phoenix. They were up by 45 in that game. Excuse me. And then to just come back down to earth like that against Golden State. It's just like, when is this going to be? How are they going to get past that? I mean, it's just like Tatum has shrinkage like crazy against Golden State.
I know a man who shot 3 straight air balls against the Jazz in pressure situations. So I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait with this Jason Tatum guy because I believe in him. The Celtics, and here's the other thing.
Was that man like 18?
Listen, sir. Him and Jalen are finally getting to the prime of their careers, but they're probably also tired for the first time in their lives because they don't have endless energy and they're asked to do so much on both sides of the court and they're human. And he's trying to play, X amount of games. And I'm sure there's always burnout in NBA season. When you start this hot, you're always going to hit a snag. I think we're going to roll right into Jason Tatum's playing a lot better. So is the Celtics. Oh, and Robert Williams is coming back. I think the fact that we're dipping a little bit is fine. We're going to be above 500. We're going to win, 2 games to every one. And then Jason Tatum's going to get his health back, get his legs back on him right after the All-Star game. And then we're going to have Robert Williams back. And then that team is dangerous because then it's all about building chemistry. We're going to have a playoff seed locked up. What it is, it doesn't matter. Get there healthy.
And I mean, don't you just want them to sit Rob Williams forever? They keep talking about bringing him back before Christmas. It's like, let's just focus on letting this guy play 15 games a year. Because it's like, this team is going to make a deep run. They need to make sure that Rob Williams, it's like, whatever they need to do, they need to play him 5 games so that he can be ready for a full postseason run. It's like, that's all I care about right now.
They told Isaiah Thomas, you can't hurt yourself by playing. And that was false. And I just feel like the Celtics have a recent history of doing this, and it just looks bad. That's where I'll go with that. Because Robert Williams, they said, oh, the reason he's playing is because there's no structural damage. He doesn't need surgery, and he couldn't possibly hurt it worse by playing. He'll be ready for training camp. Has surgery, misses not only training camp, but the first half of the season. Celtics going to end up in a situation where their training staff is looked at differently.
One team I'm starting to look at a little bit differently is the New Orleans Pelicans. They've been playing really good basketball. They're
Nola, baby.
They're number one. What's that?
I said Nola, baby. Those jerseys.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, they're number one in the West. They're playing really well. Zion's had a big year. Brandon Ingram's been hurt a bit, but CJ McCollum is playing well. Even Alvarado off the bench had 38 the other night. I can't even believe that. Had me reminded of Tony Delk scoring 50 plus on the Suns. But long story short, can New Orleans keep this up?
They can keep it up, and they can be a very good regular season team, much like the Hawks were in the 2010s. They don't have enough elite talent around Zion to spread the floor well enough to win. They don't have, but Brandon Ingram at his best, CJ McCollum at his best, and Zion at their best can beat any team. They won't be at their best for 4 games out of 7, not all 3 of them. One will get hurt, one won't play, one will have an off game, a good game. If all three of them played their best, they can beat any team in a 7-game series. But you'll never get that. That's just not who those three guys are in their makeup. They do play a very good complementary brand of basketball. If you don't watch them, they're very fun to watch on both sides of the floor. A lot of hustle plays. They're very exciting, but they have no elite talent around Zion. And Zion's also never played a full season. So how much faith do I have in them? If this was a buy or sell, I'm selling. But if they were to win 60 games, much like that Hawks team did, I'd be cool with them winning that, knowing that they're not going to the finals.
You would ask me what I would need to see from the Grizzlies to consider them serious. I'd like to ask you the same question.
The Grizzlies need a better rebounding percentage and more consistency across the board. Because much like I just said about McCollum, Zion, and Ingram, you take Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson and Dylan Brooks and John Morant and all these and Steven Adams, you take all this talent, this collection of talent, that's right up there with Golden State. That's right up there with Boston. It maybe not in their top duo, but 1 through 6, Memphis is loaded with talent. Guys who can do a lot, guys who can spread the floor, guys who are very, very athletic and springy and long and good defensively. They've got a collection of talent there. And what they would need to do for me is all be more consistent, take defense more seriously, and they're so vocal and they care about what fans say and commentators say. And I'd like to see and it's not their fault. What it would take for me, I'm sorry that it took me so long to get here to say concisely, maturity. It would take for them to get real old, real fast, while still being able to afford all of that talent. And they're all young, so it's not like they're acting not their age. It's just you need to see that team. I guarantee you that team, not 1 through 6, is in the gym early and late. I guarantee that's not happening. But that's what you need to see, that type of dedication, because the talent's there. They stay healthy. That team is freaking good, and they got a top 5 player in the world.
I know that James Harden isn't in the gym early and late, but the 76ers have been playing good basketball. Embiid is having a crazy year. Harden is back, and definitely not him that he was 5 years ago, but still a decent player. Could this be a year that the 76ers do good? It just feels like Embiid is on like a one-man, just on like a one-man wrecking crew right now. And, I wonder if with the way things are set up in the NBA, can somebody like that have success? Do you take the 76ers seriously at all, or would they still need to get another piece?
I say this every week ad nauseum, and the Jimmy G stuff, while statistically true, has a lot of hyperbole in it. I say this every time we talk about Embiid. Embiid should be able to take 3 dribbles, drop step, and put people in the basket 80% of the time that he touches the ball. These smaller, skinnier, shorter centers in the NBA nowadays, that is a 7-foot, 250-pound behemoth who can shoot and dribble. But the idea that he doesn't catch it in the post, turn over his shoulder with all of his moves and talent, and just dunk people right into the basket or get a wide open hook shot off a dream fake is silly. So that team's always going to be a threat. James Harden's bad. He had the same Carmelo Anthony career trajectory, but his highs weren't as high and his lows were lower. Like, he's bad. That guy was once systematically destroyed the game of basketball. And I can't remember who it was that said that. I don't remember exactly who said it off the top of my head, but he was. And he's holding this team back. And what's sad is they're probably not going to win as many games as they did last year. So they're probably not going to consider him for MVP when that voting comes around. But when it comes to valuable, because of what he can do, adjusting shots, blocking shots, rebounding, as well as the scoring, I don't know a guy who's more responsible for his team winning than Joel Embiid right now.
Yeah, I definitely feel like his win share, like his win responsibility is definitely extremely high. It just feels like he doesn't have a worthy, Harden is still good, but he's not like good enough. I wish we got to
Maxey
see
doesn't do
Butler
it for you?
If Butler was with Embiid, I feel like they would have won a championship. I loved how those two both have a similar makeup. I liked how they were on the same team. It's too bad they didn't get to play together longer.
They decided as a franchise to pay Ben Simmons more to get less. It was a shrewd move by the organization. They decided, no, we don't want the guy for 2 years at whatever it was, 90 million. We'd rather have this guy at 5 years, 150 million, and then he plays 60 games for us, and then we trade him the next year.
God, the Bucks are destroying the Warriors 74-56 right now.
Styles make fights. In the same way we can't beat the Warriors, if the Warriors got to play a healthy Bucks team last year instead of the Celtics, that Bucks team would have beat the brakes off the Warriors team.
God, I feel
Also,
like that.
I also think we could have beat the Bucks last year, even if they were healthy. So it's just, again, I think styles make fights.
I feel like now that Middleton is back, and just with the way that Brook Lopez, I mean, you could argue say that Brook Lopez is having his most efficient year. I mean, he's hitting more threes than he ever has, and he's blocking more shots than he ever has. And he's like 36 years old, and he's scoring 15 points. I mean, what Brook Lopez is doing is there's not a lot of guys who can do it. I think he's the only guy in the NBA that's averaging more than 2 blocks, more than 2 threes. I mean, that was something that Porzingis used to do. I don't know if he's still doing that. Like, that was kind of a pretty rare thing, but it's Brook Lopez, I feel like, doesn't get mentioned a whole lot, but he's really transformed his game. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why that Bucks team is really good, but with Middleton back, it's going to be hard to beat them.
Middleton is it for them because Giannis is Giannis, but Middleton hits tough, unguardable shots.
He's a hard shot maker.
And here's the thing with Giannis, he has his worst free throw percentage since like his rookie year. So they're still vulnerable until he can figure that out because that's typically between the years. So whatever that's going to need to be, or whatever that is, that's going to need to sort itself out.
I know he shoots too many free throws too to shoot a bad percentage.
Well, I don't know how he could possibly shoot less. That man gets shanked. And yeah, it's not his fault that he's giraffe-like, and he can honestly take 2 steps from the free throw line or from the half court. I mean, some of those fast breaks are absurd. Just picks up the ball 2 feet behind the 3-point line, dunks it off 2 steps. Like James Harden would take 5 steps and get away with it. Giannis is just such a freak that's just natural. That was 2 steps, and they were so long and so fast, and he dunked it so hard. He's a wonderful athlete to watch play. He does need to add skill to his game. He's not going to age well. He's not going to be the most athletic dude on the court for his entire career. But he's exciting. But free throws, not being able to hit him when you're that guy taking double digits a game, yeah, it's going to come back to bite you in a playoff series.
So the NBA, they named the MVP award after Michael Jordan. They named the they named the sixth man after Kevin McHale.
Oh no, it was Havlicek. Havlicek was 6th man.
Oh, Havlicek. In the spirit of the new MVP, and it being Michael Jordan, everything like that, who is your MVP candidate right now after Jason Tatum's last few cool games? I feel like he was probably the number 1 in the MVP race. Just wondering if that's changed for you at all over the last 5 games or so with his play.
He was never number 1 for me. I think Donovan Mitchell deserves credit. I think Luka Doncic deserves credit. I think Embiid should be winning right now. I think Jokic should get credit. He should not win it, but he should get credit. I think Zion, to a large extent, right now, as it stands, having the best record in the West, should get credit. But right now, it's Embiid's to lose, and I don't care. I don't care how many games he misses. I don't care. When he plays, if he's doing this, that's the MVP right there.
I agree with you. I would like to disagree, but I can't. I feel like it's Embiid's. I feel like he could have maybe won it 2 years ago. He should have won it last year, and now he's just like, F it. This is mine. And I feel like he better get it.
We're going to look back at that second Jokic MVP, the last year one over Embiid, like Steve Nash over Kobe. Like, in what world is that the right decision?
it's weird how it feels like it's certain guys' years to just win one. It was like the year that Russ won one. It felt like it was his year to get it. The year that Harden got it, it felt like it just feels like sometimes there's an agenda basically around these MVPs. It's like you could almost feel like Jokic was going to win that back to back.
I can make the argument he's a worse back-to-back MVP than Steve Nash. His team's not been as big a threat to win a championship as those Phoenix Suns teams.
I just so disagree with the Nash ones.
I do too, but you had a game to save your life, and you have Steve Nash and that Phoenix Sun team, or Jokic in any version of the Nuggets that he's been a part of.
I would definitely go those Suns, yeah.
Also, Steve Nash, what does he do best? He shoots and passes. I have more faith in him shooting and passing than Jokic doing his fruity tooty Harlem Globetrotter-esque. And I know he's inspiring for out-of-shape people everywhere. He is a basketball genius. He's tall, Luka. He's very good. I don't mean to discredit the man. Guy's averaging something like 27, 10, and 6 or whatever. He's very, very good. Hashtag very good. He doesn't deserve back-to-back MVPs, and what he does in the playoffs is shrink. Steve Nash was the same in the playoffs. He just is small, can't play defense, and the rest of his team shrunk, and that offensive system didn't really work in the playoffs. But that's a system thing. Jokic doesn't work in the playoffs.
Well, yeah, that's going to do it for us. We're going to go back to the hashtag very good for us. That's going to do it. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place. Some guy was remoting onto my computer today, trying to help me get Facebook back. Hopefully we'll have it soon, and hopefully we can distribute this stuff a lot better. But thank you for hanging with us. In the meantime, we'll catch you next week. Take care till then.